What's up, guys? Welcome to Wide World Friends English, and today we're going to talk about 30 intermediate phrasal verbs you really should know. You probably know somewhat, but some of them are used kind of improperly, especially if they don't have the preposition on the end. So, quick recap here. Phrasal verbs are a verb that you must use with something like a preposition or an adverb in order to complete the meaning. You can't use count, as in count on. You can't use count on its own and it mean the same thing as count on, as in you can count on me, for example. So definitely make sure that you pay attention to these, how we explain that you use them. We're going to explain some nuances in culture. So even if you are familiar with the words, maybe you are not familiar with the nuances that they carry.
Yeah, and you hear these a lot and you read them a lot in English, but it's really hard to keep in mind that these things are connected together. These become a phrasal verb. It's not a verb, and then later on in the sentence you see this random preposition.
Yeah.
You really have to be able to understand these phrasal verbs as a unit, as together in your mind. Even if they're, some words in between the preposition, you need to be able to get these firmly grasped because they can get a little bit difficult sometimes.
Yeah, so you've got to follow these according to the rules, and according to is a great example of another phrasal verb. You literally can't use according without to, so they have to go together. And sometimes people mistakenly leave the to out because they don't think it's that important, but it really is. It really determines the meaning of what you mean with according.
And the goal of this video is not only to just tell you these verbs, but to be able to show you how to use these phrasal verbs in a real context as we go along.
All right, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about giving permission. Some phrasals that you'll use for giving permission to someone or to receive permission from someone. So one way that you might do this very casually is to say, yeah, go ahead. So maybe your son comes up and asks, hey, can I have a popsicle? It's really hot. My friend's mom is giving out popsicles. Can I have one? You might say, yeah, go ahead. You can have a popsicle.
So in that way, you're giving permission to the other person. We're going to talk about a lot of these, and some of them, they carry almost exactly the same meaning, but
the situation is different.
Right. So go ahead is a really good phrasal verb. What's another one we could use instead of saying, James, go ahead?
Go for it is much more energetic than go ahead. Go ahead can be very soft and gentle, like, okay, go ahead. But if you say go for it, like it's very energetic, it's like you can do it. You might shout this at a ball game or something like that. Just go for it. You can do it.
A different way of asking permission, that's granting permission in a way, but another one is saying, hey, I'm going to jump in. Mm-hmm. I'm going to jump in here. So if people are doing an activity, or one of the favorite things that I would love to do in China is to play a version of hacky sack where there's a ball, you kick it around in a circle, and it's great because people can just join in, and then when they get bored, they can jump in, and then they can jump out. Like there's no pressure of commitment to say you got to stay here this much time. You can jump into playing a game without any prior planning.
Right, and it's also used as an invitation a lot. So giving permission in the form of an invitation. So you could say, hey, jump in whenever you're ready. Mm. We use this a lot to include people. It's a very casual, friendly way to invite someone to join in the group's activities. So if you see your friend standing off in the corner somewhere, you could be like, hey man, jump in whenever you're ready. A couple of other ways that we would grant permission is to be a lot more formal. Maybe you would say, I agree to this, or I agree upon this, or do you agree to this? But it's always agree to. You can say agree upon, but that's even more formal, and likely you'll not want to use that necessarily. But you'll also say consent to. Do you consent to this? We have this thing in America called consent forms. So schools will often send them back with their kids, and it'll be to a field trip or taking pictures of your kids, or a consent form for taking pictures at a field day or on a field trip. Can the school take these pictures and use them on a website, for example? This is a consent form. It's getting the parents' consent to agree to their children's photo being taken and used by the school. So this is another way you could say, I consent to this, but it's very formal. Again, you don't want to use that in casual conversation.
And these can often be found in actually the negative. Oftentimes a person will say, I didn't agree to this, or I didn't consent to this.
Yes.
And that becomes very difficult very fast.
Yeah. Well, it becomes angry. If your friend comes to you and says, I didn't consent to this, that's a very serious thing. You've really transgressed them somehow.
Yeah,
You've really
that's an accusation, and it's a big. And immediately when you know where you said it's a very formal thing, so you know just by the vocabulary, this is a big deal.
Yes, they're not going to say, "Hey, I didn't jump into this." They're going to say something. They're going to say consent. Another really formal one is going to be to give authorization. So you have to give authorization for an agency to access your private information. You're going to have to give your authorization for your insurance to have information on you and on an accident that you were in or something. You give authorization as a very legal term.
Or even like an app. So when you download an app, sometimes the app will ask for authorization or consent for you to be able to, for the app to be able to interact with your photos or videos, for example.
Or the contacts on your list.
Right.
It's very scary when you think about it. The next few that we're going to introduce are very...
not formal.
They're not so formal. They're expressions, though. They're not just phrasal verb. They involve a phrasal verb, but they are expressions. So to give the thumbs up means you're saying, yes, you can do it. Like, I agree to this, essentially. But it's a very friendly way to say it. It's like, I'm giving you the thumbs up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and our son does this a lot, where sometimes he'll be nervous and he'll be doing something. He'll kind of look backwards and he'll just look at us and I'll give him a thumbs up, like saying, yes, go for it. You got this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Another way you can say is like give the green light. So when you're driving, green light means go. So to give the green light on something is to say, yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
Another one along the same lines is give the okay for. So a lot of times, especially in some small businesses, you're kind of always kind of wanting to make sure everybody knows what's happening. And so you might say, hey, did you get the okay for that? And so just to make sure that the boss knows what's going on. And so maybe you say, hey, before you do that, you need to get the okay, or you need to be given the okay to do that because the boss really needs to know.
Yeah, and it's also laid back. It's a friendlier way to say, did he give you authorization for this?
Right.
That's the more formal way that you would say it, but it's a friendlier way to approach it. Another one is to give the go-ahead. To give the go-ahead is to be like, you know what? It's okay. Give the go-ahead for something. Give the go-ahead to do something. Now, the other give a phrases, so give a thumbs up, give a green light, or to give the okay, those all can be paired with to or for. Almost interchangeably. There is a slight nuance there, but that's not as important as knowing it's either to or for. But give the go-ahead is a little different. It's only for. You can say give the go-ahead to do something, but it's not used as often as give the go-ahead for something. So I got the go-ahead for doing this. So that's a little bit different of a nuance there.
So the last three that we're going to talk about for just giving permission is to go along with, give in, or yield to.
These are what you do in response to receiving permission, really.
Somebody grants you permission and then you respond by doing one of these phrasal verbs.
Yeah. So if I say, okay, son, go ahead and play with your friend, I could say go along. So I say, go ahead, he will go along with her and have fun with his friend, right? It's going to be a little bit different than saying he walked with her to go to the playground. Like, it's very sui bien, very relaxed, very casual. Okay, so to go along with is usually accompanied with go ahead. Go along with your friend. You might get along with someone. You might go along with your friend. You might go along with the rules. You might go along with the flow. There's a lot of ways to use this. But in terms of receiving permission, you can go along with someone to accomplish something. So if you get the go ahead, you can go along with somebody to do whatever it is.
Next two are going to be given to and yield to. And these two are they get very formal as you go, as opposed to go along with. Give into and yield to are very, very powerful kind of ideas where you're giving into this pressure or force, and you're allowing it to take you. These are very powerful terms. They use a lot of power imagery in them. And so if people are using these words, it means that the context, the meaning that they're talking about is one of power and not just one of just informal things. So if I say I yield to my mother-in-law, for example, that's a totally different meaning than I'm going along with my mother-in-law. It has a different meaning, a different connotation, and that's where these phrasal verbs, that's really where they get complicated.
Yeah.
It's not so much in the words themselves or the preposition, but it's when you combine them together and they kind of produce something that is greater than the mixture of these two words put together.
The next thing we're going to talk about is persevering. So, if life gets hard, it hits you, and it kind of just keeps hitting you. Let's be honest, there's not much of a break. Graduate school. There's a lot of work that happens, and there's a lot of things that happen along with your work, and you can't catch a break sometimes. So how can you use phrasal verbs to explain your feelings or to encourage someone who is going through something difficult?
So one way is to say, carry on. So if a person's really struggling, it's like they have a big, heavy weight on their back. And so you say, carry on. You can carry on, or let's carry on. So people get kind of worked up and they get kind of frustrated with something and they get stuck. And then one thing you can say is, come on, let's carry on.
Yeah.
And let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's a very encouraging way. Another way you can do it is to keep doing what you're doing. So carry on with your work. Carry on with your studies. Carry on with whatever you were doing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a great way to encourage. It's another great way to just say, hey, you're doing well. Keep going. Keep doing it.
The next two is push on and go on. So a lot of times it is the idea that you have this, again, these are all, these tend to have very significant images that go with it. So if I'm pushing through something, it's like I come against a barrier, a wall, and my goal is to push through the obstacle.
Yeah. So if you're talking about a life obstacle that comes, maybe it's a health problem, to push through that, to encourage someone to push through, or to say, I will stand by you as you push through. All of those things are meaning that you're going to get through it together. You will get to the other side. But to push on means not that barrier is not necessarily ever going to go away. Maybe it's a handicap. Maybe it's something where there's a significant thing that happens in one's life where it will never go away and it will never really get better. But you can push on. You still have to go. Life still happens. You need to push on.
Another one is to say go on. So to be able to go on your way or to go on as you try to do something, just go on, just go for it. Like we would say is like if somebody's struggling or if maybe they're running in a race and you would say, go on through, you got this. Or you're standing and you're saying, this way, go on this way. Yeah. Come on, you can do it.
Keep on going on.
Yeah. These are really encouraging things that you can say to a person that's really struggling in something. Go on.
Right. Get through is the same as push through, but it has a different connotation of I've gotten through it or I'm getting through it, meaning you're in the midst of pushing through that obstacle. So you are getting through university or you're getting through this promotion or you're getting through this move, this transition to a new city or a new country. You're getting through. So to say that I got through something means that obstacle is no longer there. You've already been through it.
Right. So the next two is to keep up with and to count on. Keep up with is really good because it's already somebody's there. Normally you're following something or you're going in pace with something else and you have to keep up with it. I do this to my son. He saw some runners running outside and he is just enthralled with running now.
Yes.
And so he wants to keep up with them. He wants to run with them. And so
that would encourage him to do that.
Yeah. And so now when we're running, he'll run ahead and we have to keep up with him. Yes. Or he has to keep up with us sometimes.
Yeah. And we encourage him with that. We say, hey, man, keep up. Keep going. Keep up. So another thing that you can say to someone who needs your help to persevere, you could say, you can count on me. You can count on me to be there. You can count on me to be by your side. You can count on me to support you as you go through this.
Right.
So to count on someone is very important. It's not like you're counting heads or counting people, but you're counting on them. You're relying on them. Another realm we're going to talk about is to arrive at a result. So if you guys are all working together toward a common goal, once you've arrived at that goal, what can you say? These phrasal verbs in particular, you're going to say at the end of a discussion. So if somebody says, so what did you come up with? That is a phrasal. Then you would say, well, we came up with a plan to market, or we came up with a plan to go swimming this summer, or something like this.
Or for graduate school, I could say, I ended up with a diploma.
Yeah.
So these are ideas like there's a goal and you're going towards that goal and you're going to get that goal. I ended up with a diploma, or I ended up with training.
I think ended up, though, comes down more as a passive, though.
Yeah.
Like, I ended up with is kind of like, I don't know how I did that, but I ended up with it.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel. Another way is say break through. So it's not just pushing through. Now we are breaking through. We have finished it. We've gone to the other side of the wall.
Another thing is to arrive at. We have arrived at a plan. We have arrived at a decision. We've arrived at a goal. So to arrive at is a more formal thing. So you're likely going to hear this in business meetings. You're going to hear it in more formal settings. You will also hear it casually. It's one of those that kind of goes between the two, but to arrive at means there was some kind of formal discussion over the matter. Decide to, this one can go both ways. It can be casual or formal, but we decided to name result.
Yeah, this happens a lot, especially with businesses or marriages or really any point that people are together and they have to make a decision. We decided, and we use that pronoun, we decided to do this.
Yes.
And it's a really good way to say that this was a discussion, we are working on this, and now we have a decision to...
So another thing you might do and might say is that we set up a plan. We set up a goal, we set up a series of goals, we set up a path. It could be any one of these things, but you set up something is the idea that you're building something. So the last thing that we're going to talk about, the last realm of phrasal verbs we'll talk about today is communicating a point. What are some phrasals that we use to communicate?
One of them is to get across the point. So if I'm trying to get my son to understand something, which is very true at the moment, we want the idea to get across.
Yes.
The idea of not waking your sister up from a nap. We want that idea to get across. Why isn't this getting across to you?
Yeah. That's the idea of like either sitting on opposite ends of the table, you're trying to get something across to them, or maybe there's a gap between you and them and understanding, and you've got to get across somehow. The idea is you're going to need some kind of information bridge. Something is going to get that information across to them.
The next one is get at.
Yeah, to get at the point, or to get at the main idea, or to get at something.
Yeah, this is a really good one, especially for grading or for getting your grades back, is a lot of the teachers will say, you didn't get at the point. You didn't get to the point. You didn't actually do the thing I asked you to do. You didn't read the instructions well enough, so you never actually got at the point of the story or whatever.
We often say, get at it as well. So for example, if we ask our son to do something and he doesn't, and we walk into the room and he's playing with his toys, we'll say, son, get at it. It means just get to doing the things that you're supposed to do. So get at or get to, both of those work almost interchangeably.
Yeah.
Get is very flexible when it comes to phrasals, to be honest, which makes it confusing. But that's why we explain these things. So if you're going to get through to someone, the idea is you've got to work through some kind of obstacle to get an idea through to them. Yeah. So with language, cross-cultural communication is a great way. You're working through language barriers and cultural barriers in order to communicate something. So you're trying to get through to them this idea or this message.
Another one that even our son knows at this point is get down to. There's a song from Mulan that says, let's get down to business.
Yeah.
And he'll sing this all the time, but it's the idea of let's get down into the bottom and the base, the foundation, and let's get down to it so that we can accomplish our goal.
Yeah. Cut through all the dross, all the extra, all the flattery. There's going to be nothing extra. You get down to business, essentially. Get down to the point, get down to the main meaning. So another thing is to talk over something or to talk through. So to talk through is the same idea as a barrier. There's something that you've got to work through to get there. You talk through the process is ideally what this goes to. So if there's a process or a series of steps that needs to happen in order to make something happen, you might talk someone through it or walk someone through it. You might have heard it this way. So if that's going to be a new exercise routine, for example, at first, a coach is going to walk them through it. They're going to show them, explain to them very slowly at first so that they get it. Once they get it, it's their responsibility to do it. It's the same thing with talk through something. You want to talk through certain points in order to get through to them the idea. Talk through the process, talk through the ideas, talk through the methodology in order to get the idea through to them.
When I hear this phrasal verb, the first thing I think of is a game where you can't see the other people that are handling a bomb, and they have to ask you questions about what they see, and you are supposed to talk through talk them through disarming the bomb. And so it's a really good practice of English at all, but it's also a good way to show this is how you disarm the bomb. This is how you make it safe.
He's talking about a video game, just to be clear.
Yeah, not a real game.
So the last one I'm going to do is the other talk, which is talk over. So how do you talk over something?
This is a really good one, especially in loud settings or controversial settings, because a lot of times a person will be talking, and talking over the person normally just means talking louder than the person so that you are heard. This happens a lot maybe with
two kids
or presidential debates. This happens a lot when two people are having an argument. Oftentimes one will get louder and the other one will be a little softer, and the louder one will be talking over the other person.
Well, and that's with voice, but it also has a meaning of to talk through something. So talk over something, talk the problem over, something like that. You can say that, and it essentially means talk through it.
Yeah, let's talk it over.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It has the two different meanings there. So.
Right.
There you go. Those are some phrasal verbs. Those are situations in which we would use them. I hope this helps clarify some things for phrasal verbs that you have already heard as an intermediate speaker, but clarifies the situation a little bit when you would use them. Especially phrasals with get very confusing. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like more videos like this, let us know and subscribe so you can see more videos in the future.
Catch you guys on the next one.
Bye.